and welcome to our last programme ahead of the European Parliament elections, which are now just 5 weeks away. Coming up, dark forces. MEPs discuss how outside interference in those elections could change the nature of this Parliament.
We're talking about interference in our sovereign elections by foreign powers.
And time to panic. A teenage climate activist warns MEPs there are more important things than Brexit.
And we are rapidly running out of time. And yet basically nothing is happening.
First to the long goodbye. The UK will now take part in the European elections, according to the EU Council President Donald Tusk, after an agreement to extend the Brexit deadline to October. Mr Tusk said the successful British MEPs could be here for months, if not longer, but the uncertainty over how long they'll be here for and how they'll use their influence during that time looms large over the last plenary sitting here in Strasbourg. There were some sharp exchanges between Mr Tusk and the Parliament's Brexit coordinator, who warned that the Brexit debate will poison the European elections.
There was an end-of-term feel to this session for British MEPs. It was a question of goodbye, or was it? As UK MEPs shook hands with the European Council President, he said he hasn't given up on the dream of them staying in the EU.
During the European Council, one of the leaders warned us not to be dreamers and that we shouldn't think that Brexit could be reversed. I didn't respond at the time, but today in front of you, I would like to say, at this rather difficult moment in our history, we need dreamers and dreams. We cannot give into fatalism. At least I will not stop dreaming about a better and united Europe.
For some it was less of a dream, more a case of being stuck in a never-ending nightmare.
Well, I have tried for 20 years to do myself out of this job, and I thought I'd succeeded. Little did I realise what the UK political class would do. So the morning message is I'm coming back.
This was a taste for some members of what they fear will be a more disruptive presence of the UK after next month's elections, and the reason why the Parliament's Brexit coordinator strongly criticised the decision of member states to delay Brexit until the end of October.
I fear that it will continue the uncertainty. I fear that it will prolong the indecision. And I fear most of all that it will import the Brexit mess into the European Union. And moreover, that it will poison the upcoming European election.
After 30 years here, one MEP remembered its contribution to the North.
There has been some good times and some extremely sad times where we went through some of the most terrible terrorism ever faced in any part of Europe. And I had to go through that. But it was this House, it was Jacques Delors, and it was who stood by the people of Northern Ireland when he brought about, and when Ian Paisley and John Hume and I went to see him back in '94 at the beginning of the peace process. He asked us, how can Europe help you?
The future of British MEPs is one of the many unknowns around Brexit. For now, they're stuck in the limbo of this Parliament.
As a Scottish and UK member, it turns out reports of our demise were greatly exaggerated. But I am grateful for the Council for the time, as President Tusk says, to find a way out of this. And President Tusk, to paraphrase John Lennon, you may say that you're a dreamer, but you're not the only one.
Well, I'm joined now in studio by Seb Dance of the SND Group and Labour Party MEP, Sinn Féin's Leah Ní Riada of the GUE NGL Group representing Ireland South, and also from Ireland South, Sean Kelly of the European People's Party and Fine Gael. Thanks all for joining us. Seb, if I can just start with you, what is it like now for a UK MEP? 1 minute planning to leave this place and for a career beyond this place, the next minute planning an election campaign.
It's dreamy. It's beyond any of my wildest dreams. No, it's awful because I mean, there's just so much uncertainty around. But I think in politics, you have to live with the uncertainty, and that's what we do. But obviously, for many others who don't choose an elected path, that uncertainty remains for them, and it's even harder, I think, for those people. But you know, we have to campaign for what we believe in and to carry on fighting for what we believe is right. So that's what I intend to do.
What would you say to some Irish voters who might see it maybe as unfair that British MEPs will now have a greater say here, even though their mandate will be temporary after the next election?
What do you mean by greater say?
Well, I mean, in terms of voting numbers,
Yeah.
Irish people might look on saying, well, why is a country that wants to leave the European Union, has voted to do so,
Sure.
why are they sending MEPs to have
Well, two
here?
things I'd say to my Irish cousins is, firstly, sorry about all of this, frankly. Please try and bear with us. I know it's not easy. I know you're fed up with it. I'm fed up with it, frankly. But we're going through a process at the moment. And that process may well resolve itself with Britain leaving the European Union, but it may well resolve itself with Britain not leaving the European Union. So there is this process going on. The second thing I'd say is that whilst we are members of the European Union, we are, of course, like everyone else, bound by the same benefits and obligations, and that includes, of course, sending members of the European Parliament to this place. So I know it's awful and the uncertainty is horrible. People like me are doing everything we can to try and end this thing, and others are obviously campaigning to see it through. But who knows who will win at this stage?
And both of you are in a constituency that was moved to a 5-seater. Now it could be a 4-seater again, with one of those seats put on in cold storage until Britain leaves the European Union. Sean, do you think it should have been left until this stage to decide, you know, the number of seats that the UK should be given? You know, in other words, should they have waited until Britain actually left to avoid?
Well, actually, when it was debated over 2 years ago, I advised strongly at that time that no seats should be distributed until the United Kingdom had actually left. I said they could keep them in abeyance for future expansion, but also to be discourteous to the British to be distributing their seats while they're here. What I have said has come to pass. Unfortunately, they didn't listen to me, and now we're in the unfortunate position in my constituency and in Dublin, where we will be either electing 4 or 5. The person who's 5th, they may take up their seats if the British leave. If the British do not leave, which I hope will happen actually, because we don't want to see them leaving it at all, then they may never take up their seats. And what would be the legal position then? So it's a bit of a dilemma, but it's part of Brexit. Brexit is complicated and gets more complicated by the day.
Do you think there's a risk of a legal challenge?
I think there's a possibility, definitely, because if you stand for election and go forward on the basis that there are 5 seats there, and the clarity doesn't emerge until subsequently, you will have spent a lot of time, a lot of money. You will feel that you're entitled to your seat. So I could see a challenge being mounted. Whether it will be successful or not is another matter, but definitely you would feel that a person in that position would definitely have a case to make.
Leah, your colleague Martina Anderson was saying in the Parliament this week that the Fine Gael government has abandoned the North. Sinn Féin's view is that 2 of those seats should have been given to the North.
Well, yes, and indeed I said that in the very beginning, that those 2 seats should have been allocated to the North, because after all 56% of them did vote to remain within the EU. So they deserve democratic representation, and now we have this ridiculous situation where they may be there for 6 months, they may not be there for 6 months, and how very disappointing and I suppose utterly bereft that they must be feeling now, because they now have the opportunity to have representation, but it's going to be taken away again, possibly in 6 months, or possibly sooner, or possibly not at all. So I think there's no question that it will throw up a lot of legal challenges, notwithstanding those people in the North that will be left behind.
Could Sinn Féin not have done what Fine Gael is doing and running candidates from the North in the South, like Fine Gael is doing with Mark Durkan?
Well, we believe that Martina Anderson has been a fantastic and a terrific MEP and is continuously fighting against Brexit, and will do that, and is standing again, thankfully. But it's for representing those people. It would be like asking me to not represent the people of Ireland South, but suddenly put myself in Dublin and represent the people of Dublin. I would be doing a disservice then. So it's not about that. It's about having geographic representation in where you're situated, and that unfortunately wasn't afforded to the people of the North.
Sean, what's your response to that?
I just want to say one thing, that Fine Gael and the government haven't left the North behind. In fact, all the energy over the last 2 years has gone into ensuring there'll be an all-Ireland approach. And in fairness to the opposition parties, Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin were part of that. And as a result, everybody now says that Ireland did a fantastic job. Our main concerns have been taken on board, and even last night in the EPP group meeting, my friend for the last 5 years who sat alongside me, Christianis Kariņš, who's now the Prime Minister of Latvia, he said at council meetings, when Leo Varadkar speaks, everyone listens. And when Leo says it's okay, everybody says it's okay. So we've done a fantastic job representing all of Ireland. We want to keep that going into the future.
Donald Tusk spoke yesterday about keeping the dream alive that Britain could stay within the European Union. One way that dream could be kept alive is by another people's vote. Will these European elections now force the Labour Party to show its hand definitively on its position on a second referendum?
It would certainly help the Labour Party electorally if we had a firm commitment to a people's vote. I think that there is sufficient movement amongst voters who voted leave, who look at the options that are now available and realise that actually none of them meet even remotely any of the promises that were put in 2016. The prospectus then is now massively different from the reality in 2019. But you know, there's something else that these elections are about, which is of course the future direction of the European Union. It can't just be in the UK, much less elsewhere in the 27, but it can't be in the UK an election about just Brexit. It's got to be about the vision that different groups and parties put forward about how they want to cooperate and work with our European partners, however long that is for. And so I would hope that in these European elections, the Labour Party has both a strong message about what that vision is and a commitment to a confirmatory vote on whatever process emerges from Westminster.
Well, there has been a lot of talk here in Strasbourg this week about external forces trying to influence the forthcoming elections. Some MEPs warned that it will lead to a greater presence of far-right and Eurosceptic members. Others saw this as an effort to interfere with free speech.
Brexit and the US election were used as examples by members of where online platforms were used to manipulate votes.
We're not talking just about free speech, which is the most valuable thing that we're protecting. We're talking about interference in our sovereign elections by foreign powers. This is a proven issue in the 2016 presidential election, a proven issue in the Brexit referendum. Not make-believe, proven, evidence.
And of course, we see the ad hoc efforts that the tech platforms are promising, like YouTube, Facebook, Google, or Twitter. But without independent oversight over algorithms, we outsource our responsibility.
Some argue that protecting free speech should be a greater priority.
We have to protect ourselves from these evil Russians who are controlling the internet, who are sending misinformation, who single-handedly won the referendum on Brexit because of their bots, apparently. But we don't worry at all about the fact that actually what this could lead to is censorship and control of free speech.
Was this a factor in Brexit, and has this Parliament learned the lessons from perhaps the Brexit campaign?
I think it was a role in Brexit. I think it was a role in the election of Trump, and I do have profound fears about the ability now of liberal democracies to function and to have a proper discussion at a national or even an international level whilst this siloing effect is taking place. So I think we have a clear duty to look at how social media is influencing the way in which we engage with the institutions, and having a frank discussion about what the implications are. I don't know what the answer is. I honestly don't know what the answer is, but part of that is not knowing actually what the question is at the moment. I think as long as we keep a very clear watching brief on what's going on and we have a proper discussion about the implications, and I'm sure we can harness this technology for good, but we have to recognise what the flip side of it is.
Sean, is this a fear, do you think, in Ireland as well?
I think two things. Number one, criminals will always use every possible means to engage in criminality, be it for financial gain or to destroy democracy and so forth. And social media has been used. They were ahead of the game. Now I think, though, that the fight back has started. And in fairness to the Commission, they have set up measures, I think, that will minimise their opportunities to influence the European elections. And also, it would appear that, we'll say, taking the American election on to elections since then, that the influence has been less obvious, and especially by Russia.
Sinn Féin was once seen as a very Eurosceptic party. Do you think the Sinn Féin has moved on from that?
No, we always said we were critical. We never said we were sceptical. There's a kind of a nuance there. There is a difference, and we will continue to be critical because it does need reform. There is a huge democratic deficit in the institutions, and that needs radical reform. But you need to do that from the inside, not from the outside. And so our places here to try and change that so that we have more accountability and transparency. But when you look at the rise of the right and the populism, as you say, and even given with Brexit, the problem is the EU isn't really listening to its citizens, because if it were, this is a push against austerity, this is a push against so many, I suppose, regulations, directives and penalties that are incurred, and just the whole movement of the EU, the centralisation of it, the move towards militarisation, all of that, I think there's a kickback, and it's time like the EU and the institutions have to listen to those voices. Particularly now, I think climate is such a massive thing that you have a ground movement that's coming up rallying against the EU for not taking action, and that's going to increase more and more and more. So we need to tackle that, and we need to be here and have a very strong voice to actually tackle that on a real level.
Greta Thunberg is the Swedish teenager who triggered school strikes by young people around the world to raise the alarm about climate change. This week, MEPs were the target of one of her blunt speeches. She told them that if they were serious about climate change, they wouldn't spend all their time talking about taxes and Brexit.
If our house was falling apart, you wouldn't be celebrating that one single nation like Ireland may soon divest from fossil fuels. If our house was falling apart, the media wouldn't be writing about anything else. The ongoing climate and ecological crisis would make up all the headlines. If our house was falling apart, you wouldn't say that you have the situation under control and place the future living conditions for all species in the hands of inventions that are yet to be invented. And you would not spend all your time as a politician arguing about taxes or Brexit.
She had a little bit of a dig at Ireland, saying we're patting ourselves on the back, a bit of self-congratulation here.
Yes, but firstly, I think I have to disagree with Leah. I mean, to say that people are railing against the European Union for not taking action on climate change is, frankly, total nonsense, because Europe has led the discussion all along. Europe, and I represented the Parliament in Paris, where the global agreement to have actions and to decarbonise the economy, and subsequently in Marrakesh and in Katowice. It was Europe led it, and we have a package of measures now to deal with it. So Europe is actually, especially with the United States withdrawing and Donald Trump, if it weren't for Europe, the whole thing would disintegrate.
Not according to Greta Thunberg, though.
So where Ireland is concerned, we can't pat ourselves in the back. Let's be honest. Ireland, and Leo Varadkar said it when he came to Parliament, we've been laggards. We had targets for 2020 and we ignored them. But now that's changing, thankfully, because I did the renewable energies file here in the European Parliament. We have targets. I've spoken to the Minister. Minister Bruton gets it. He's putting together a plan to ensure that Ireland will no longer be laggards but leaders. Now that will take time, but we have to get it, and everybody has to be part of it. And I think what Greta is doing, and especially the protests by the young people in Dublin, I attended those, that's fantastic. We need more of it. We need more of it so that the people in power, like myself and in the law and everywhere else, will really get acting as soon as possible.
I have to say, I find that level of hypocrisy quite alarming, because for a start, Greta Thunberg was refused by the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael group to actually speak speak in the plenary. It is true, check your facts. And as well as that, it's wonderful to be championing climate action, Sean, but you've consistently voted in favour of fossil fuels and consistently voted against amendments that would help climate. And also, I have to say, sitting as a member of the European budgets, I do know that it's only lip service that's been paid to actually investing in what's really needed to address the climate crisis that we're in. So unless that investment is actually put in there, the time for talk is gone in that regard. We need action, we need funding of that, and we need an absolute change of tack, top down, bottom up. The whole thing has to be reformed, because we are in a terrible, terrible crisis. We're not going to reach our climate targets, Sean, as you well know.
Did the EPP block her from speaking in the Parliament because she spoke in committee?
The conference of presidents,
of which the EPP has their representative.
Which everybody has a representative. They make the decision of what goes before Parliament. They decided that she couldn't appear before Parliament. There are protocols regarding it, and I've never seen anyone speaking in Parliament other than Prime Ministers and the Pope. But she was here. She was here yesterday. She was here yesterday.
That's not true.
A full meeting by the Interview Committee. She got all the publicity. She was able to make her speech. I was there. Many more people were there, and I think that was the key point.
That's very
to get the message across.
Very misleading.
It's wrong to say that she was blocked to speak in Parliament.
But she was.
And also, you have to say, from the point of view of the Conference of Presidents, they have to make a call on all the people worldwide who want to come and speak in Parliament.
And we've had many people speaking in the Parliament who are not Prime Ministers or who are not politicians. We've had many people
we had the Pope. Who had we?
But Lee, is there another point to that?
Human rights activists.
If you invite every campaign group or activist to come before the Parliament,
in the plenary, check your facts.
If you invite every activist, lobbyist, campaigner to come before the Parliament, I mean, where do you draw the line then?
But on something this important, and she's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for all kinds of things. She's clearly speaking to the young people who are the future of our country, of all of our countries, and she's clearly representing them, and therefore I think it's that serious that she merited that, she needed that, and as a voice of hope, I think, for future generations, it would have been wonderful for the plenary to extend the hand, and for the Conference of Presidents to say, let's make an exception for Greta Thunberg. She's an extraordinary young woman, and she has to be commended.
So should farmers be invited if they have concerns about climate change to address?
Well, look, we need to obviously look at the speakers who are coming, and you can't just say, let's just invite every single person, but Greta Thunberg is an exceptional young woman, and not everybody is that exceptional. So we have had other speakers in the Parliament outside of Prime Ministers and the Pope, people who are exceptional in their fields, and they have to be done case by case basis. But in this case, it was the ALDE group and the EPP who said in the Conference of Presidents, no, we won't take her in.
But
now, I'm glad she got to speak in the Environment Committee, but that was only in the Environment Committee.
She was
not
here
speaking to the whole House.
Every single member of Parliament could have attended it. I attended it. The place was packed
it
with
would have
media
given a
attention.
far stronger message coming
she had the
from
whole
the
media
plenary.
there. She got all the publicity she deserved. We got the message loud and clear, and now it's to act on it. There's no point in just putting on someone on the stage and saying, oh great, and then forgetting about it.
It would have given a far stronger message, Sean, if she was in the plenary. As you well know, it would have elevated it to saying the European Parliament is actually serious about environment.
The European Parliament
is serious about climate
The European Parliament has led everything.
The European Parliament is not putting any money towards it, as you well know.
The European Parliament has done everything in relation to it. The renewable energy file, the energy efficiency file, the energy performance of buildings file, the governance file.
We will disagree
all those things have been led and done by the European Parliament, and we are driving the Council all along. I know it from dealing with, for instance, the renewable energy file. I pushed them to 35% at Parliament level, and I brought the Council up from 27 to 32. All done by the Parliament. It's the Parliament that's driving everything here more than anyone else.
Well, no doubt environmental issues will dominate the election and the next session of this Parliament. But for now, thanks for joining us, Sean, Leah and Seb. Lastly, I spoke to some Irish MEPs who are bowing out of politics about their thoughts on the current standing of the European project.
There are really big challenges facing Europe, not just on the Brexit side, but the whole question of the move towards populism and nationalism again, particularly in Eastern European member states. And I think the challenge will be to stand up for the values of the European Union, especially from those countries that are here so long, such as Ireland. We're an old member of the club and we need to stand up for Europe.
I thought that's something that Tusk said today in the Parliament. In a very short sentence, he said, when he spoke about the awful, the burning of Notre Dame and the genuine grief that people felt, he said, we are bound together by more than treaties. And I thought that epitomises what Europe is about. And if people could have that sense of Europe, yes, we have the day-to-day, the difficult bits, the stuff that doesn't work, just like we have at home. But there's a bigger picture. It's about 28 member states working together for the common good. Yes, sometimes we don't get it right, but the fact that we're trying, the fact that we're doing, the fact that we're working in a place that was built on the ruins of World War I and World War II is, in my opinion, sufficient reason to continue that project.
And that's all we've got time for here in Strasbourg until July. Thank you for watching and goodbye.